Hello. On behalf of the Boston Asian American Film Festival, a co-production of the Asian American Resource Workshop and Arts Emerson, and the film's co-presenter, AARP Massachusetts, welcome to the post-film conversation of BAAFF's centerpiece documentary, Sky Blossom, Diaries of the Next Greatest Generation. I'm Kathy Yao, Outreach Manager for BAAFF, and I'll be moderating today's Q&A. There will be an opportunity to ask questions to the filmmakers in the chat toward the end of the Q&A, so please post your questions there, and we'll do our best to get them all in. I am so pleased to welcome three of the amazing filmmakers for this film: Richard Lui, director; Alex Lowe, producer; and Maria Lineva, composer. Welcome to all our filmmakers.
Great to be here. Hey, Kathy.
So happy you're able to join us. Thank you. There's so much to talk about, so I think I'm just going to dive right in, and I have to start with you, Richard. Why this story, and why this story now?
It started for me about 8 years ago when my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then I started to realize how many family caregivers there are in our country. At least 53 million before COVID. We estimate 5 million family caregivers from COVID, unpaid, untrained, providing not only great care and love for their families, but a lot of value, $500 billion each year. And, me just becoming a family caregiver, I was like, I'd never heard of this thing. It is the most common job in America, right? But how can I never heard? I've heard of retail clerk. I've heard of used car salesman, which I was one at one point. I've heard of a lot of other things, right? But I've never heard of family caregiver. And so I knew that there was an opportunity to close that cultural gap that is so important during the time that we live in, because we see so much violence and hate. And when we can underline equality in families and in people caring for another person, as simple as that, I think we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Caregiving seems to be something, and I have experience also as a caregiver, as a secondary caregiver, but it seems to be this thing that we don't really talk about. It's like a secret or something that we really want to hide. So I think that's why, I'm so appreciative of your film, because really it is the first time that I've seen something that is documenting this experience that, as you've said, it affects millions of people in America and young children. Alex, how about you? What drew you to this story and this project?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I think certainly the stories that we were able to find and uncover throughout this film is, I think, what drew me to it. And my own personal experience with being a secondary caregiver in my family with my grandparents. So having seen that and knowing that for young caregivers, especially in the military community, that the caregiving challenge is so much greater. Seeing, and hearing those experiences really drew me to it, as well as Richard's passion for telling these kinds of stories. But, I think you're certainly right that this is the kind of film that brings the grandeur to that, that this experience, deserves, right? That it is something that is worthy of being on the big screen. It is something that, we should be proud of, and we can tell these stories. And that's what we tried to do, I think, ultimately with the film.
So how did you connect with these families? How did you decide that, they would be the five to document and to share those experiences? I mean, were you looking for veteran families, or did it just happen? And I'll Richard, Alex, look to you both.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, we actually knew we wanted to start with military families from the beginning. Wide cross-section of what that community looked like. So we tried to get a lot of geographic diversity, ethnic diversity, all of that, as well as in the different conditions that they were dealing with. So we tried to really get that spread. And we actually, in terms of our process, started by making short films on each of them. We casted 8 different families across the country, and we did 20-minute films on them. And from that, we were kind of able to understand what the story was with each family editorially. And then from that, we settled on the 5 that made the feature film, based off trying to cast families that really represented that cross section of America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Kathy, what we really wanted to do, and we know that's the theme of BAAFF this year, is we really wanted to show difference and hone in on that, so we could show sameness and togetherness and a common cause that we are all trying to do better at. And that's why, as for those of you, by the way, those who are with us right now with Maria and Alex and Kathy and myself, thanks for joining us after seeing the film. Our purpose was to show families in the Midwest, the South, the East, the West, and the Pacific Islands, Latino, Black, Native, Asian, and white. And to show that, in this time that we live in, we sometimes forget that those differences are there, but actually we share some other greater, bigger things that you don't see. And the things that we don't see, like one of those things is the simplicity of, and I don't want to use this very without great honor, but just simply love in a family. And we really honed in on those 5 million child caregivers, because, we're all been called that at some time in our lives, me longer ago, that, oh, you young folks, you don't care about anybody but yourself. And I know that's not true. And these 5 young heroes show, hey, don't discount me just because I happen to be a certain age. There's a lot behind the forehead, and we got to look past the forehead, not only with people that happen to be younger, but with all ages.
Absolutely. There's definitely a gravitas that all the young people have, that, maybe they were inclined to be as mature and organized as they are, and this sort of push that up like times a million, right? But yeah, the level of maturity and, so I came into caregiving later in life. Not that I'm old, but I'm not as young as they are. And I have to say, while I was watching this,
yeah,
I was thinking to myself, I don't know that I would be as open and loving and proud to be a caregiver as these young folks are. I don't know, Richard, if you thought, you were thinking that as you were talking with them and seeing it.
I was like, Marie got to meet some of the families, all the families, actually, I think almost all of them. Alex knows all the families personally too. And that was a big question going in when we started filming 4 or 5 years ago, sitting in using an Interrotron on top of that. So we're not even sitting face to face. We have this screen, and all you see are my legs underneath the screen, because we're recording them through the Interrotron so they can look straight into the camera, right? Yeah. And I was thinking, wow, what's it like going to be interviewing 11-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 15 and 16 and 21 and 26? I think, Kathy, as you've gone through your caregiving journey, you've probably noticed whenever you bring it up, it doesn't matter whether you have big feet, whether you've got 3 hands, whether you like to skip or run, whether you happen to like fish noodles or cheeseburgers, you get along really well. When you just start talking about that simple core thing that I think we're all built to do. And they gave their all, when Darren, as you saw in the movie, later in the movie, she started to cry because it wasn't a cry of sadness alone, it was also of pride, of simple love, and all those things at once. That happened on our first visit, Kathy. And here I was, this guy out of nowhere, landing in McMinnville, Tennessee, sitting in their backyard and interviewing them as their dogs were running around. And who am I, right? But it's that bond that you have with a person that's gone through caregiving. Doesn't matter what age you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Because, there's certainly, you needed trust in order to do this. I mean, they really are inviting you into their lives and really laying bare their vulnerabilities. So that takes a lot of trust. And Maria, I'm interested to hear, we're going to talk about the music for sure, but what was the experience like for you meeting these families and hearing about their experiences?
Well, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I've learned a lot, and not only because I had a chance to write all this beautiful music and it's my first feature length, but also because I saw the families and what they're they've been going through, and how loving and caring they are, and it's just amazing. And and as Richard said, it's absolutely right. It doesn't matter what race they are or anything else. It's just this wheel that connects, I guess, everyone, like the will to help. And that's something that reflects with the way how I see the world.
But Kathy, I gotta poke Maria a little bit, because when we first asked her to come out, you have to share your first experience.
Oh,
You landed in Los Angeles to meet the Alvarados, and we flew you. We wanted you to go there to meet them. It's the first time, Kathy, but she has a great story as to what she was going through when she first met the Alvarados.
yeah. I mean, I was very overwhelmed. So I'm in general very sensitive sometimes, and it was overwhelming because back now it's my favorite family, but my first impression, it was just very hard for me to see a young man in this condition and he's suffering. It was just too much, so I was very overwhelmed. Yeah.
You stayed in the car in the beginning. Remember, you stayed in the car in the beginning.
Yeah.
She stayed in the van, and then towards the latter part of the filming, right? Day two, then she was having a meal with them.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's been a process for me, and yeah.
Sure, for sure. I love how Richard is exposing all of your secrets. So I think that brings me to the question of, well, first of all, actually, how did you collaborate? How did it come to be that Berkeley and Maria, you were going to be the composer? And then Berkeley music students actually performed the score, is that correct?
So yeah, I graduated from Berkeley myself, and I've been for 3.5 years, so I really know Boston, and I love it. And I guess that's how Richard found me through Berkeley. I uploaded my portfolio, my resume, and that's how we got to know each other. But then we started to collaborate with the Berkeley faculties, with the film scoring department, and they gladly offered us an amazing orchestra. The orchestra with great students, musicians, and it was an amazing experience. They were all practicing our music for 2 months, and I had a chance to hear the rehearsals, hear their playing, and learning the pieces. And yeah, so that's that. And then we recorded it. It was a 3 days recording in a studio in Boston. The Futura. It's also a Berkeley grad. He was recording at yeah, and a beautiful studio itself. Yeah. You can see the footage. I think that after the movie you can see the footage of the video, like of the process.
And Kathy, the thing is, when I went to one of the practices, I could not keep a dry eye. I just could not believe hearing this stuff, because I knew each of these were written. Each family has a song, right? But I don't take it from Maria, but the way we got to Maria is through Alex, who's also a former Bostonian.
Yeah, because I was a Boston University alum, and had heard about this amazing film scoring program just down the street over at Berkeley. So that's when we initially reached out, and they were so gracious to try and connect us with students like Maria. And once we heard Maria's portfolio, like we knew she was the one. And from there, and we actually had recruited that very early on, I think, in the process, because we knew at that point, with the 5 families that we were going to have, or however many families, I think at that point we weren't even sure how many would be in the film, but we knew we needed the music to be one of the things that would help you to distinguish between the different families. And that's why having their own theme that was connected, through that helped to tell their story and where they came from, was so critical early on in the process, that we knew this was something that was going to have. But I remember when we first started with that, Richard was like, "Oh, we're we're going to have a full, symphony orchestra for this thing. And I think I had rolled my eyes at that point, said, all right, sure, we'll make it happen. but we did. And sure enough, a couple of years later, we were sitting there in that, in the recording studio with 40 musicians, and it was incredible.
Sort of like a true producer, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I love music. I tend to focus on the music, and Maria, the score is absolutely beautiful. I mean, the harp just is such a magical instrument, and in this film, and particularly with the animation, which I do want to talk about. For me, that felt like they were such a great complement to each other. And I feel like it really helped deepen the connection I think we're supposed to make when we're watching the animation. So anyone can answer this, but how did you decide to use animation? Was that something you had thought of from the beginning, or maybe when you're thinking about the music that this would be a really good idea? How did it come to be?
Alex?
Sure. Well, I think that actually came a little bit later on in the process, Kathy, maybe, during our edit, when we were thinking about some of the things that we had learned during those interviews with the families, where they had told us about, especially with the kids, that they had told us certain experiences and that had happened to them over the course of their caregiving role. And we realized, gosh, we weren't there to get that, because maybe it happened, when they were much younger, or just starting the caregive. But we knew that they were such critical parts of their story that we wanted to show them. So that's, I think, when the thought of animation came in, was, this would be a great way to show some of those things we weren't there to see. And then on top of that, it being such a very creative art form, where we really can control whatever is in the frame there, we could also characterize those moments with the kind of grandness that they deserved, right? Mm-hmm. Which was really important, I think, editorial point with those animations. So that's like when you see Rihanna early on in the film, and she says to the bullies, turn around, right? She makes that little motion in the interview with her hands, and that's just a small little thing on the camera. But when we bring it into the animation, all of a sudden that's a huge moment, right? It takes on that bigness that it needs.
And I was curious, because we actually didn't talk about this, but you were asking that question, Kathy, to Maria about the animations too, how she treated that differently than the rest of it, right? The other, like, I don't know if we actually ever had a real sit down, Kathy, as how the animations would work with Maria's music, but because we just knew she would make it right. But I don't know, did you treat that differently, Maria?
Yeah, of course. That's the moment where you actually can focus on not the narration, not what they're actually saying, but what they're feeling. And I guess that music really emphasized it. And in those moments, I want that emotional journey for the viewers, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If I explain myself correctly. But yeah, I want not just support the narration in those moments, but like make it like a little bit bigger emotionally, like to drown the listener a little bit in the plot more.
Well, and I think the wonderful thing that you all have done, including you, Maria, is that I think, with subject matter like this, I think maybe there is the potential to romanticize experiences and situations, and I don't. That didn't come through for me, even with music and sort of trying to make that particular part more dramatic. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel romanticized. You really get all of it from their experiences. There is a lot of hardship. It's really hard work. Even to put pills in the pill boxes is really time consuming. But you also showed joy. You showed joy and love and family values. So Yeah, I really appreciated that. And I think the other thing that I was thinking about, Richard, is that there are certainly journalistic elements in the film. For example, the footage of the burning pits, the footage of Chaz Allen stepping on the bomb. I mean, that was just so jarring. And then, the VA and how there's information is not centralized. So there's certainly like investigative parts. I'm curious as to, was it challenging for you throughout the process to decide how to approach this film, to make it what you wanted as a journalist by trade, as a caregiver, and as a filmmaker?
Yeah. Talk about a culture shock, moving from journalism and then working in film. And when I was working with the crew, they would often remind me that this is not necessarily a news business. We're going out to report tonight at 11 o'clock, right? And those pieces and the way we edited it was journalistic, but not opinion. Now, we didn't want to bring it. There was obviously a lot of opinion that was offered throughout the interviews, and we had purposely chose the words and the statements they made so that this was more about one issue only, and that was about families and caregiving. Young caregivers. And we wanted to stay on point because you can probably imagine with what you saw on those pieces, you could go down a different road. You could fall into an issues. Well, I shouldn't say this is an issue documentary, but you could get into a place where you're asking for action on the Hill. And we're not asking for action on the Hill, but what we are asking for is let's embrace these values. And it was difficult in the field because, I'm used to going on shoots where I will be filming for 15 hours and we're just go, 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 go. And it's so funny and I don't blame them because, different cultures, the film crew is like, by the way, do you have any craft services or, are we going to get our breaks in? And I was like, what are you talking about? We never take breaks. We just go. and that was really funny. At the end of the day, though, Kathy, 4 or 5 years later now, we're all good old friends, and they laugh at how I would drive, and they would say, hang on a second, let's be reasonable.
I love that. That's great. Alex, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a culture shock for me as well, also kind of coming from the journalism background. But I think you're absolutely right, though, Kathy. And this was really a thematic focus of ours from the very beginning, that we wanted to have something that was showing both the joy but also the difficulty, and that's part of that journalistic approach is not pulling any punches with that. But I think Richard, did a great job of explaining there. Kind of that whole process, and that we were very sensitive to anything that was opinionated. We were also very sensitive to when we include those more, journalistic moments, like you mentioned, the clip of Chaz, which is just tough to watch, right? But something that we felt was important to show because of what it meant to his story. But there were certainly a lot of back and forth with any of those moments. And, there's some things that we left on the cutting room floor because of that. But that was part of that very long edit process. I think we probably edited this film for almost a year and a half, and in that, just a lot
Yeah.
back and forth with our editors. The
Don't
different
pick an
consultants
anthology
for
your first film.
Yeah.
Don't pick an anthology for your first film.
But definitely a lot of conversations were happening. We definitely try and be very thoughtful about any moment that you see in that film.
Mm-hmm.
One quick thing on the music that you were making note of, Kathy, is we as a team, Maria, Alex, myself, and the other producers, I actually wanted more music. But the documentary culture, which I was learning as a first-time filmmaker, was that we couldn't go too far. And so we were able to keep our advisors, the ones that were trying to teach us how to do this, happy, and we pulled it back to where it's at. We know that it still may not, but we like the amount of music, and I wanted to have the most that we could, and that's why we have the CD. that's out on Spotify and Pandora, and we were committed to it, that we would get a record label for it as well. And it was because for my mother, music was the way she showed love to my father. She was caregiving and she would play. It was also her own therapy. So music is like, there's no way we cannot have it in there. We got to go all the way. And this is why, I told my mom, by the way, Mom, the soundtrack is dedicated to you. And she was like, who? I said, you. She's like, oh, that's all I got, Maria. But I made her listen to it. She loves it. She loves it.
That's great. So it's on Pandora and Spotify
and everywhere else. Yeah. Wherever you can get
it. On all the platforms, you can hear it.
Oh, by the way, breaking news. So we heard yesterday from Julius P. Williams, the conductor that worked very closely with Maria on this. Maria's like, what is he going to say?
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Officially Grammy qualified. Officially Grammy qualified.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations.
Yeah,
that is huge.
Yesterday was the day when it was official.
How did you find out? Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. Oh my gosh. Well, now I have a reason to watch the Grammys and pay attention. I want to pivot a little bit. So Rob Jr. talks a little bit about self-care, and I think that alludes to mental health and taking the time to go for a walk or go work out, as he clearly does. I wonder, did you talk about mental health with any of the other families and talk about how this experience is impacting, particularly the young people, impacting their mental health and will continue to impact their mental health in adulthood? Did you have any of those conversations, Richard or Alex?
I kind of find myself learning, Kathy, about what mental health and the best way to talk about mental health is. You can be living through something yourself. And me as a caregiver, I know my mental health has been challenged over the last 8 years. I just never expressed it that way, because the problem is culturally, before COVID happened, is mental health was the person screaming at the sky walking down the street. And what we've realized through COVID is really mental health is all sorts of different things. It's not a 1 or a 0. And just like we talk about physical health, you talked about, Rob working out, we do the same thing for our mental health. It's not a taboo word. And, back when we were interviewing all of our great young heroes, I don't think I was in the mindset of that. For the second film, we're all in it on mental health. It's important that we talk about mental health just like we talk about physical health, and that we don't put all these bad labels on them. The connotation of it is just not so swell.
Yeah, Kathy, I think it's something that shows up in the film in more subtle ways, I would say, but was one that we knew was important, from our experience caregiving. In fact, I'm actually here in Miami for this week to give my mom, who's been doing most of the caregiving for my grandfather, a couple of days off where she can just relax a little bit. So having that time off is so key. But we knew that was something that, from our experience, we wanted to have, and it's something that you see in anything from like Jenna Plouffe in Michigan saying, school is like an escape from me because it lets me get a little break from what's going on at home, or Darren saying, I'm so different, in Tennessee saying, like, I'm so different from other kids because I have this, like maturity that is so different, and see the world in such a different way. So I think it's present in those little moments where you see it. And with Rob, though, that was one where I think we wanted to really hit it home, right? And hit it home hard, because he says it in such a direct way, where it is, gosh, you gotta take time for yourself. And that was an important message to include, with that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I just going through the experience myself, it is so easy to to not, because I think it's layered, because, you know, then there's the element of guilt, right? Like I shouldn't be taking this time for myself. And yeah, so yeah, absolutely. We should be talking about it in all contexts, right? Not just caregiving.
Amen, as my dad would say.
What's that?
Amen is what my dad would say.
Amen. So I think we have some questions from our audience. First question is for Richard. I'm wondering how your father's doing. Speaking of your father, if that's okay to ask.
Oh, totally. You know, part of that, what's the name of the person that asked?
Not sure. We can get
Not
that.
sure. I got you.
I think a few people have asked that. Yeah.
Anon. Thanks for asking. And he's doing good. You know, he made it through COVID with no bouts of anything, and that was really amazing. And when we put, he can't walk or talk or eat right now, and he's in a care home, and he has a stomach tube so he gets sustenance. And when we had made that tough decision about 3.5 years ago, we did believe it would give him fruitful life, productive in ways that were important to him, just knowing who he is and where he was at health-wise. I don't know if I can say that now. I just saw him really for the first time, got to touch him for the first time about 4 or 5 months ago, after 1.5 years of looking at him through a window. And I'm hearing something different when he says stuff now. So I don't know whether we need to let him go or it's too tough to know the answer. But that's where we're at now with my dad. So thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. This is from Susan Chinson. Maria, have the Berkeley students seen the film?
That's a good question. Music is very subjective, I guess, but I've heard that a lot of people found it very, very honest, sincere, pure. That's the comments I got. Yeah, I've heard from a lot of players who's been playing in the orchestra. They came to me after the recording, and they've been telling me that they enjoyed the music, that they really love the music itself. So for me as a composer, that's the biggest compliment, when the musicians are actually enjoy playing your music.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll have to make sure every single one of them has seen the film. How long has it been since the film wrapped? And do you have any updates on how the families are doing now? I mean, were you in touch during the pandemic? Richard or Alex?
Yeah, let's see. So we wrapped shooting on the film really just right before COVID. So right in, I think, February of 2020. And actually in that same month was when we had the scoring session with Berkeley that we had spent, you know, many months trying to put together with them. So yeah, so had we not been so fortunate with the timing there, you know, COVID would have really set things back, I think.
Yeah.
So we were lucky in that regard. But and as far as the families go, certainly we've been in touch with everyone, just because you know, through the different panels we've been doing with them, or just checking up on them, because we're all, you know, we've all become good friends as a result of spending so much time together. And everyone's been doing really well, I think. And for some, actually, COVID has actually been a blessing in disguise, I think, because it's allowed for more time spent together in the home. But you know, which and just less, I think, outside distractions. So I think, but that's kind of varied by family. But I said overall, in terms of folks' health, it's been pretty good.
Good. That's great to hear. Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, Kathy, one of the families, and I don't know, you could tell when you were watching it, but the Kapanuis in Kauai, we were only able to film them once. And it's because when we went back we're going to go back the second time. And we totally understand this, because when you go through this process of telling your story, sometimes you realize, I need a break from this. This is too intense for me. And so we were unable to go back for a second visit. Some of the families we visited 4 or 5 times, and with the Kapanuis once. And you could tell just in that one visit of 4 days we spent, and we're just watching them, that Kamali gave a lot, and so did Kaleo. And so we had really hoped to get back there to get, how are they doing? How are they handling Grandpa and Bobby? Now, I think since we got the great news about BAAFF, and we appreciate it, to be here tonight, because we really know the importance of the issue, as you have said at the start. Grandpa Bobby passed away about a month and a half ago. And we just know that for Kamali was so difficult. She was reaching out to us, because we're a family of caregivers. She said, are there any ideas? I think Kamali's fine with me sharing that part. And so we were trying to work together. But it was really sad to hear, because I know, and from watching the film, Grandpa Bobby meant a lot to Kamali and to Kaleo. So in commitment to these families, because you talked about this earlier, because we believe every family gave us a gift. And when they give us this gift, we guard it. And, I said, I'm going to be there to the very end through the edit, every frame. I'm going to be there in distribution. Any questions that come up, we're going to guard what you gave us, because you gave us so much of your heart. So we're going to be in Hawaii to support that family's story for Veterans Day. PBS Hawaii will be exclusively broadcasting it. And we're going to go out and do a screening for Kamali in Honolulu, and do another screening for Kamali and Kaleo in Waimea, where we filmed the entire thing. Because like we said in the beginning, we're once you share that moment, there's no turning back sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, Maria, were you gonna jump in? I'm sorry to hear. I'm sure everyone is thinking about Kamali and Kaleo. They, all of the families have an impact and influence, me at least, in watching. But I have to say that they stuck with me, for sure. So certainly thinking about them now. We have another question from Eugenia, sort of pivoting here. Going back to what we were talking about, Richard, how you said you didn't want to focus on the action on the Hill. But what do you think our elected leaders can do or should do to help caregivers more, whether it's funding or new bills, or what do you think needs to be done?
Oh, Eugenia, trying to get yeah, I would say I support anything that will reasonably help the caregivers across the country. And in every part of our country, it's a different need. It's a different complexion. And what we do know is there's very little assistance. There have been some state programs that have come about across the country. Hawaii is actually one of the first ones to get our program to support family caregivers. And I know that Europe is also going to be considering something like that in very recent time, in the coming weeks, if not months, if not weeks. And so I think we're starting to open our eyes, and COVID really has brought it to the fore. So to answer the question as directly as I can, I'd say I'd support that which is reasonable and alleviates the difficulties that we all know that we go through as caregivers. For instance, it's not recognized at all. There's no training, there's no pay. Those are just real basics, right? Real basics for over 53 million people.
Yeah.
And Eugenia, I think the good news is that there is support for this, and it's from both sides. And when we were initially releasing the film, we reached out to members of Congress who might be interested in supporting the film's release, and it ended up having received support from both from senators and Congress members on both sides. So we had Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell both sign on, and that's pretty rare, as you all know, to see them both sign on for anything.
They actually knew each other was signing on
and they
too.
knew they were, yeah, they knew they were both
Wow.
signing on to support this. You know, saying that, you know, that the ideas of this film, that, you know, this concept of, gosh, you know, we gotta pay attention to caregivers, young caregivers, military caregivers, that was an important idea, and they both came together for that. So that gives me some hope that there's something coming down the line.
Yeah, it's historic. Absolutely. I was just thinking about the scene with Jenna. She's going through her mail and she's like, "Oh, this is probably a bill, money I don't have," and just sort of threw it in the trash pile. I mean, that's right. Yeah, not great, but it was a funny scene.
It was. You felt it, right? You felt
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. What can you do? So I think we have time for one more question, and I have to ask, what's next? What projects are up next for everyone? And Alex, I'll go to you first.
Well, sure. I mean, and I, you know, this is actually something all three of us are working on, which is a film called Hidden Wounds, which is very much building on some of the ideas we explored in Sky Blossom as well, but really focusing on something you brought up earlier, which was mental health. And this is a film that is about mental health and caregiving. So, but I'll let Richard pitch it. He's the real salesman about this upcoming film.
All right, give me the elevator pitch.
Yeah, I think Alex already hit it. As I was mentioning earlier, it's been a frustrating time to see our misunderstanding of what mental health might be. And so this is a real big dig on not only the afflictions that you can't see, which is when you see these families that they're running through disabilities you can't see. But on the flip side, you also can't see the challenges to what you can't see in the caregivers. And so this isn't a focus necessarily on young caregivers per se. It's as the entire unit, and the entire unit of a family, and the way the roles evolve and change through time. And the interesting thing is, we filmed this through COVID, was what COVID did to what they needed to get to. What do they need to get to? I can't answer that, only that a better place.
Yeah.
And so we hope that this really breaks open something that's at home for everybody, and an issue related to mental health. And I think it's going to come out in May during Mental Health Awareness Month of 2022. And Marie is on the team.
We'll definitely look out for that. Maria, do you have any other projects coming up?
This is a big one, and I also work on some small short movies, independent ones. So I'm busy, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, that's great. Yep. Well, then the Grammys. You're gonna watch the Grammys, right?
Yeah. Hey, Kathy, can I say one thing really quickly?
Absolutely.
And it is Maria and Alex and Haley and Don, the other producers. We worked really hard to walk the talk, and I know that we're here at BAAFF, and I know BAAFF supports these values. And I wanted to say that, you know, we really wanted to focus on being members of groups that are not often well represented in film. And so of the money that we raised, both in kind and in donations, about $3 million, we spent over 90% spent on those who are underrepresented, either by gender or by background. And you'll notice that all of our heroes in the film, 4 out of 5 happen to be very strong to be young women soon, or young women at the moment. And diversity and the importance of it, and bringing that difference together behind the camera. I know, look, it's a small budget, right? We're not like gargantuan, but a half of that budget was pro bono and in kind. And you know, in the business, and it's not easy to get that much pro bono in kind work, but they also represented that same beautiful fabric and complexion that we're striving for. So I just wanted to thank all that had given and all that were part of it, and then that when we can try to make the right decisions along the way, it's super, super possible.
Yeah. What a great note to end on. Thank you all so much. Richard, Maria, Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Sadly, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for this engaging and important, really important conversation. BAAFF, along with the recording of this conversation, will be available through Sunday evening, and an extended run of short films will be available through November 1st. Visit artsemerson.org for tickets and more information. And this film is up for an Audience Choice Award. So please cast your audience ballot by clicking on the button on the bottom of your screen in the previous viewing window, and let us know how much you loved the film. Thank you again for joining us.
Go BAAFF.
Thanks so much for having us.